女士们、先生们，大家上午好！欢迎出席国务院新闻办新闻发布会。今天我们进行经济数据例行发布。我们邀请到国家统计局局长康义先生、国家统计局新闻发言人王冠华女士，
Commissioner of the National Bureau of Statistics and the spokesperson of the NBS, Wang Guanhua. They will brief us the economic performance of 2023 and answer your questions. Now let's invite Mr. Kang Yi to brief us. Thank you. Friends from media, good morning. So first, I will brief you the national economic performance of 2023. In 2023, the economic development recovered, and we advanced high-quality development. Faced with complex and grave international environment, as well as arduous tasks to advance reform, promote development, and maintain stability at home, under the strong leadership of CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, all regions and departments implement the decisions and arrangements made by the CPC Central Committee and the State Council, adhere to the general principle of seeking progress while maintaining stability, fully and faithfully applied the new development philosophy, accelerated efforts to foster a new pattern of development, comprehensively deepened reform and opening up, strengthened macro regulation, and redoubled efforts to expand domestic demand, optimize structure, boost confidence, and prevent and diffuse risks. As a result, the national economy witnessed the momentum of recovery. Supply and demand improved steadily. Transformation and upgrades were advanced solidly. Employment and prices were generally stable. People's well-being was robustly and effectively guaranteed. Steady progress was made in pursuing high-quality development, and major expected targets were well achieved. According to preliminary estimates, the GDP was 126,000 billion yuan in 2023, an increase of 5.2% over the previous year at constant prices. By industries, the value added of the primary industry was 8,975.5 billion yuan, up by 4.1%. That of the secondary industry was 48,259 billion yuan, up by 4.7%, and that of the tertiary industry was 68,823.8 billion yuan, up by 5.8%. By quarter, the GDP for the first quarter went up by 4.5% year-on-year, up by 6.3% for the second quarter, 4.9% for the third quarter, and 5.2% for the fourth quarter. The GDP increased by 1% quarter-on-quarter in the fourth quarter. Grain output reached another record high, and the production of animal husbandry grew steadily. The total output of grain in 2023 was 695.41 million tons, an increase of 888 million tons over the previous year, or up by 1.3%. Of this total, the output of summer grain was 146.15 million tons, down by 0.8%, and that of early rice was 22.34 million tons, up by 0.8%. The output of autumn grain reached 520.92 million tons, up by 1.9%. By species, the output of rice was 206.6 million tons, down by 0.9%. Wheat, 136.59 million tons, down by 0.8%. Corn, 288.84 million tons, up by 4.2%. And soybean, 20.84 million tons, up by 2.8%. The output of oil-bearing crops was 38.64 million tons, up by 5.7%. The total output of pork, beef, mutton, and poultry in 2023 was 96.41 million tons, up by 4.5% over the previous year. Of this total, the output of pork was 57.94 million tons, up by 4.6%. Beef, 7.53 million tons, up by 4.8%. Mutton, 5.31 million tons, up by 1.3%. And poultry, 25.63 million tons, up by 4.9%. The production of milk reached 41.97 million tons, up by 6.7%. And that of eggs stood at 35.63 million tons, up by 3.1%. In 2023, 726.62 million pigs were slaughtered, up by 3.8%. And 434.22 million pigs were registered in stock at the end of the year, down by 4.1%. 2. Industrial production recovered steadily and equipment manufacturing grew fast. The total value added of industrial enterprises above the designated size increased by 4.6% over the previous year. In terms of sectors, the value added of mining was up by 2.3%, that of manufacturing up by 5%, and that of production and supply of electricity, thermal power, gas and water up by 4.3%. The value added of equipment manufacturing went up by 6.8%. 2.2 percentage points faster than that of the industrial enterprises above the designated size. In terms of ownership, the value added of state-holding enterprise grew by 5%. That of shareholding enterprises up by 5.3%. That of the enterprises funded by foreign investors and investors from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan increased by 1.4%, and that of private enterprises up by 3.1%. By products, the production of solar cells, new energy vehicles, and power generating units grew by 54%, 30.3%, and 28.5% respectively. In December, the total value added of the industrial enterprises above the designated size grew by 6.8% year-on-year, or up by 0.58% month-on-month. In the first 11 months, the total profits made by industrial enterprises above the designated size were 6,982.3 billion yuan, down by 4.4% year-on-year, of which the profits in November grew by 29.5%, registering growth for 4 consecutive months. 3. Service sector registered fast growth, and contact and gathering-based services improved notably. The value added of services went up by 5.8% over the previous year. The value added of accommodation and catering, information transmission, software and information technology services, leasing and business services, transportation, storage, and postal services, financial intermediation, and wholesale and retail grew by 14.5%, 11.9%, 9.3%, 8%, 6.8%, and 6.2%, respectively. In December, the index of services production went up by 8.5% year-on-year. Specifically, that of accommodation and catering and that of information transmission, software and information technology services grew by 34.8% and 13.8% respectively. In the first 11 months, the business revenue of service enterprises above the designated size grew by 8.5% year-on-year, of which the business revenue of culture, sports and recreation, information transmission, software and information technology services, and leasing and business services went up by 18.9%, 12.8%, and 12.7% respectively. 4. Market sales recovered rapidly and services consumption grew fast. In 2023, the total retail sales of consumer goods reached 47.1495 trillion yuan, up by 7.2% over the previous year. Analyzed by different areas, the retail sales in urban areas reached 40.749 trillion yuan, up by 7.1%. And the retail sales in rural areas stood at 6,405 billion yuan, up by 8%. Grouped by consumption patterns, the retail sales of goods were 41.8 605 trillion yuan, up by 5.8%, and the income of catering was 5,289 billion yuan, up by 20.4%. The sales of basic living goods grew steadily, with the retail sales of clothes, shoes, hats, and textiles, and that of grain, oil, and food by enterprises above the designated size growing by 12.9% and 5.2% respectively. The sales of upgraded goods grew fast, with the retail sales of gold, silver, and jewelry, sports and recreational articles, and communication equipment by enterprises above the designated size growing by 13.3%, 11.2%, and 7.0% respectively. The national online retail sales reached 15,426.4 billion yuan, growing by 11% over the previous year. Specifically, the online retail sales of physical goods were 13,017.4 billion yuan, up by 8.4%, accounting for 27.6% of the total sales of consumer goods. In December, the total retail sales of consumer goods went up by 7.4% year-on-year, or a month-on-month growth of 0.42%. The retail sales of services in 2023 grew by 20% over that of the previous year. 5. Investment in fixed assets scaled up, and investment in high-tech industries witnessed a good momentum of growth. In 2023, the investment in fixed assets, excluding rural households, reached 50,303.6 billion yuan, up by 3% over the previous year, or up by 6.4% after deducting price factors. Specifically, the investment in infrastructure went up by 5.9%, manufacturing up by 6.5%, and real estate development down by 9.6%. The floor space of commercial buildings sold reached 1,117.35 million square meters, down by 8.5%. The total sales of commercial buildings were 11,662.2 billion yuan, down by 6.5%. By industries, the investment in the primary industry went down by 0.1%, that in the secondary industry up by 9%, and that in the tertiary industry up by 0.4%. The private investment went down by 0.4%. Deducting the investment in real estate development, the private investment grew by 9.2%. The investment in high-tech industries grew by 10.3%, 7.3 percentage points faster than that of the total investment. Specifically, the investment in high-tech manufacturing and high-tech services grew by 9.9% and 11.4% respectively. In terms of high-tech manufacturing, the investment in manufacturing of aerospace vehicle and equipment, manufacturing of computers and office devices, and manufacturing of electronics and communication equipment grew by 18.4%, 14.5%, and 11.1% respectively. In terms of high-tech services, the investment in services for transformation of scientific and technological achievements and in e-commerce services went up by 31.8% and 29.2% respectively. In December, the investment in fixed assets, excluding rural households, grew by 0.09% month-on-month. 6. Imports and exports of goods were generally stable, and trade structure continued to upgrade. In 2023, the total value of imports and exports of goods was 41,756.8 billion yuan, an increase of 0.2% over the previous year. The total value of exports was 22,772.6 billion yuan, up by 0.6%. The total value of imports was 17,984.2 billion yuan, down by 0.3%. The trade balance was 5,788.4 billion yuan in surplus. The imports and exports by private enterprises grew by 6.3%, accounting for 53.5% of the total value of imports and exports, 3.1 percentage points higher than that of the previous year. The imports and exports with the Belt and Road partner countries grew by 2.8%, accounting for 46.6% of the total value of imports and exports.
1.2 percentage points higher than that of the previous year. The exports of mechanical and electrical products grew by 2.9%, accounting for 58.6% of the total value of exports. In December, the total value of imports and exports of goods was 3,809.8 billion yuan, up by 2.8% year-on-year. Specifically, the total value of exports was 2,175.4 billion yuan, up by 3.8%. The total value of imports was 1,634.5 billion yuan, up by 1.6%. 7. Consumer price grew mildly and the core CPI was generally stable. In 2023, the consumer price index went up by 0.2% over the previous year. Grouped by commodity categories, prices for food, tobacco, and alcohol grew by 0.3%. Clothing grew by 1%. Housing kept at the same level. Articles and services for daily use grew by 0.1%. Transportation and communication dropped by 2.3%. Education, culture, and recreation grew by 2%. Medical services and healthcare grew by 1.1%, and other articles and services grew by 3.2%. In terms of food, tobacco, and alcohol prices, prices for pork went down by 13.6%, fresh vegetables down by 2.6%, grain up by 1%, and fresh fruits up by 4.9%. Core CPI, excluding the prices of food and energy, went up by 0.7%. In December, the CPI went down by 0.3% year-on-year, or up by 0.1% month-on-month. In 2023, the producer prices for industrial products went down by 3% over the previous year. In December, it went down by 2.7% year-on-year, or down by 0.3% month-on-month. The purchasing prices for industrial producers went down by 3.6%. Over the previous year, in December, it went down by 3.8% year-on-year, or down by 0.2% month-on-month. 8. Employment was generally stable, and a surveyed unemployment rate in urban areas went down. In 2023, the surveyed unemployment rate in urban areas averaged 5.2%, 0.4 percentage points lower than that of the previous year. In December, the surveyed unemployment rate in urban areas was 5.1%. The surveyed unemployment rate of population with local household registration was 5.2%, and that of population with non-local household registration was 4.7%, of which the rate of population with non-local agricultural household registration was 4.3%. The surveyed unemployment rate of the population aged from 16 to 24, from 25 to 29, and from 30 to 59, excluding students, registered 14.9%, 6.1%, and 3.9%, respectively. The urban surveyed unemployment rate in 31 major countries was 5%. The employees of enterprises worked 49 hours per week on average. In 2023, the number of rural migrant workers totaled 297.53 million, 1.91 million more than that of the previous year, or up by 0.6%. Specifically, local migrant workers totaled 120.95 million, down by 2.2%. Non-local migrant workers totaled 176.58 million, up by 2.7%. The average monthly income of migrant workers was 4,780 yuan, up by 3.6% over the previous year. 9. Resident income continued to increase, and income of rural residents grew faster than that of urban residents. In 2023, the nationwide per capita disposable income of residents was 39,218 yuan, a nominal increase of 6.3% over that of the previous year, and a real increase of 6.1% after deducting price factors. In terms of permanent residence, the per capita disposable income of urban households was 51,821 yuan, a nominal growth of 5.1% over that of the previous year, and a real growth of 4.8% after deducting price factors. The per capita disposable income of rural households was 21,691 yuan, a nominal growth of 7.7% over that of the previous year, and a real growth of 7.6% after deducting price factors. The median of the nationwide per capita disposable income was 33,036 yuan, a nominal increase of 5.3% over that of the previous year. Grouped by income quintile, the per capita disposable income of low-income group reached 9,215 yuan, the lower middle income group 20,442 yuan, the middle income group 32,195 yuan, the upper middle income group 50,220 yuan, and the high income group 95.55 yuan. In 2023, the nationwide per capita consumption expenditure was 26,796 yuan, a nominal growth of 9.2% over the previous year, or a real growth of 9% after deducting price factors. The per capita consumption expenditure on food, tobacco, and alcohol accounted for 29.8% of the per capita consumption expenditure, 0.7 percentage points lower than that of the previous year. The per capita consumption expenditure on services went up by 14.4%, accounting for 45.2% of the per capita consumption expenditure, 2 percentage points higher than that of the previous year. 10. Total population declined, and urbanization rate continued to grow. By the end of 2023, the national population was, including the population of 31 provinces, autonomous regions, and municipalities and servicemen, but excluding residents of Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, and foreigners living in the 31 provinces, autonomous regions, and municipalities. The national population was 1,409.67 million, a decrease of 2.08 million over that of at the end of 2022. In 2023, the number of births was 9.02 million, with a birth rate of 6.39% per thousand. The number of deaths was 11.1 million, with a mortality rate of 7.87 per thousand. The natural population growth rate was minus 1.48 per thousand. In terms of gender, the male population was 720.32 million, and the female population was 689.35 million. The sex ratio of the total population was 104.49. The female is 100. In terms of age, the population at the working age from 16 to 59 was 864.81 million, accounting for 61.3% of the total population. The population aged 60 and over was 296.97 million, accounting for 21.1% of the total population. Specifically, the population aged 65 and over was 216.76 million, accounting for 15.4% of the total population. In terms of urban-rural structure, the permanent residents in urban areas were 932.67 million, an increase of 11.96 million over the end of the previous year, and the permanent residents in rural areas were 477 million, a decrease of 14.04 million. The share of urban population in the total population was 66.16%, 0.94 percentage points higher than that of the end of the previous year. Generally speaking, with external pressure withstood and internal difficulties overcome in 2023, the national economy witnessed momentum of recovery. The high-quality development was advanced steadily. The major expected targets were well achieved, and solid strides were taken in building China into a modern socialist country in all respects. However, We must be aware that the external environment is increasingly complex, severe, and uncertain, and the economic growth is still facing difficulties and challenges. At the next stage, we must take Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era as a guideline, fully implement the guiding principles of the 20th CPC National Congress and the second plenary session of the 20th CPC Central Committee, as well as the arrangements made by the Central Economic Work Conference, fully and faithfully apply the new development philosophy on all fronts, and accelerate efforts to foster a new pattern of development. Focusing on the primary mission of high-quality development, we must follow the principle of seeking progress while maintaining stability, promoting stability through progress and establishing the new before abolishing the old. We must intensify macro regulation, coordinate expanding domestic demand with deepening supply-side structural reform, ensure both new urbanization and rural revitalization across the board, and secure both high-quality development and high-level security. We must effectively enhance economic vitality, prevent and mitigate risks, improve social expectations, consolidate and boost the sound momentum of economic recovery and growth, to effectively upgrade the quality and appropriately expand the quantity of the national economy. And next, I also like to brief you on how we upgrade our labor force survey system. So just now, I also shared with you the unemployment rate of the 3 age brackets. The National Bureau of Statistics highly values the upgrade of labor force survey system. We took into account the advice put up by the public, gathered relevant departments and experts to have in-depth discussions, and also learned from international standards and other experience of other countries, conducted field research, went through statistical methods and calibers of looking into unemployment to fully reflect unemployment of young people, and also taking into our national reality. We have made 2 adjustments about how to calculating the unemployment rate. First is we will not release unemployment rate in the workforce for students aged from 16 to 24. And secondly, we release unemployment rate of students aged from 25 to 29. We have 2 reasons. First, we want to more accurately monitor the unemployment rate and employment rate of young people. In 2023, among urban population from 16 to 24, over 60% were students. About 62 million. And about 30% were non-students, about 34 million. In China, students' overwhelming priority is study instead of having part-time jobs. If we include students in the age group, then the statistics will mix students having part-time jobs and graduates looking for jobs. So this number will not accurately reflect the unemployment rate and employment rate of young people who really need a job. Excluding students in this age group will help us more accurately reflect the employment situation of graduate or non-student, and we can provide them with more accurate employment services and a more effective and targeted employment services policies. Secondly, we want to show the whole picture of young people's job-seeking process from graduating to stabilizing their career. Now, young people in China are receiving longer years of education. At 24, many young people are still choosing their jobs. They are unstably employed or not employed. But by age 29, most of them have passed that period and they've stabilized their jobs. The whole society pays great attention to the employment of young people who just graduate and also are concerned about their employment in the immediate period after their graduation. Therefore, we will release their unemployment rate for people aged from 25 to 29. About the way of release, the MBS will release unemployment rate for age brackets from 16 to 24, 25 to 29, and 30 to 59, excluding students. You can look for the data from our data library. So that's all for my briefing. Now I'm ready to take your questions. Thank you for your briefing. Now let's take questions.
谢谢主持人，北京青年报记者提问，想问一下一个总体的情况。2023年面对世界经济复苏乏力
In 2023, in the face of a weak global economy and frequent natural disasters and difficult tasks at home, how do you assess China's economy? Last year, are the main targets being met? Thank you for your question. In my opening remarks, I have given a comprehensive overview of China's economic performance over the past year. Well, on the whole, the targets are fully met. It is fair to say that over the past year, the economic performance in China was sound and satisfactory. Well, for China, the past year is one of sound recovery and hard-won progress with highlights. First, sound recovery. In terms of economic growth, last year China's GDP exceeded 126 trillion yuan, up by 5.2% from the previous year. If we look at the 4 quarters, well, the growth momentum is rising from a low level in early 2023 and stabilized by the end of the year, and the good momentum is being further cemented. China's economy increment also exceeded 6 trillion RMB, the size of a medium country's annual GDP. The per capita GDP is also rising steadily to the tune of 89,385 yuan, up by 5.4%. On jobs, the job market is on the whole improving. The surveyed unemployment in urban areas was stable, down by 0.4 percentage points, and we see particular improvement in the job market for migrant workers. If we look at consumer prices, they rose moderately. Last year's CPI rose by 0.2%, and the core CPI was up by 0.7%. If we look at the international balance of payment, our trade in goods grew by 0.6%, and foreign exchange reserves also exceeded $3.2 trillion. Second, there has been higher quality in economic growth. The quality of our economic growth has been effectively enhanced while ensuring reasonable growth in quantity. We are focused on the primary task of promoting high-quality development, and we have been strengthening the economic strength through structural adjustment and transition. High-quality development has been enhanced and we have been steadily increasing investment in innovation. By early estimates, last year, China's R&D spending totaled 3,327.82 billion yuan. R&D investment intensity reached 2.64%, 0.08 percentage points than the previous year. Last year, we have heard some very good news in major innovation in science and technology. In particular, we have seen solid progress in high-end, smart and green development in the manufacturing industry. The industrial mix is also being upgraded. The role of services industries and consumption as the main engine has become more pronounced. The added value of services industry account for 54.6% of the GDP, 1.2 percentage points higher than the last year. The contribution of final consumption to economic growth reached 82.5%, 43.1 percentage points higher than the previous year. The foundation for development and security has been further cemented. Our grain production has grown by 1.3% from the previous year. The output of coal, crude oil, and natural gas rose by 2.9%, 2%, and 5.8% respectively. We have worked hard to fend off systemic risks and ensured economic and financial security. We have also provided effective safeguard for people's livelihood. Per capita disposable income grew by 6.1% from the previous year. And third, the highlights. We'll not only look at China's economic growth itself, but also how it fared compared to other economies. In 2023, the 5.2% growth rate in China is not only higher than the global average of 3%, it is also one of the highest among the main economies in the world. In 2023, China's contribution to the global growth is expected to exceed 30%, making China the biggest engine of global growth. In the meantime, despite the decline in global trade, China's exports achieved moderate growth, and our trade share in the global market also remained stable. And in terms of consumer prices, in contrast to the high inflation worldwide and the struggle of some countries between stabilizing growth and fighting inflation, we have done quite well in terms of controlling consumer prices. And fourth, we have made some hard-won achievements. Last year, the global economy remained sluggish. There have been complex changes in the international landscape and frequent geopolitical conflicts. The external environment is getting more complex and uncertain. There have been frequent natural disasters and cyclical and structural problems at home. This makes the achievements we made ever more valuable and precious. And these could not have been achieved without the strong leadership of the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core. It is also a result of the guidance of the Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for the new era, and also a result of the hard work of the Chinese people, and it should be fully recognized and cherished. Looking forward, we must be clear-eyed that the external environment remains complex and grim. Effective demand at home is insufficient. There is overcapacity in certain sectors. People's expectations are a bit weak. and there are still hidden risks. We still need to overcome some difficulties and challenges to further grow the Chinese economy. And we need to act on the decisions of the Central Economic Work Conference to effectively address these difficulties and resolve the existing problems and put China's economy on a steady course in the long run. Thank you.
谢谢主持人。环球时报记者提问，想请
With Global Times.
2024年4季度以及全年三大需求对
My question is the contribution of the three demand indicators for China's growth in the fourth quarter, and what is your assessment of the dual circulation at home and internationally?
关心的是2个方面的问题啊，一个是拉动经济拉动三大需求啊，另外一个呢是双循环啊。那么首先呢，这个回答第一个问题啊，这个三大需求的贡献和拉动啊。那么2023年啊，这个最终消费支出、资本形成总额、货物和服务进出口。 分别拉动经济增长
So increased 4.3%, 1.5%, and negative 0.6%. And this will contribute 22.5%, 28%, negative 11.4% respectively. In Q4, also the contribution will also account for 4.2%, negative 0.2%. This will also contribute to 80%, 23.1%, and negative 3.1% to the economic growth. As for your second question, it's about the dual circulation. In 2023, in constructing the new development paradigm, we have made notable progress. We have three aspects. First, for the major effect of the domestic circulation has been improved. We will continue to boost the domestic consumption and unleash the potential. The domestic consumption has made a great contribution. In 2023, in the total consumer goods has been reached 47.1 trillion yuan, and also fixed asset also contribute to 53 trillion yuan. And the domestic consumption has contributed 111% of the consumption, 25% increase compared to last year. As we build the overall market and contribute to the dual circulation and improve the consumption flow of factors, we could see every aspect has been improved, especially for the industrial production. In Q4, for the industrial production, it's about up by 0.2%. And for the sales of the industrial enterprises above designated size has maintained above 97%. And also for the cargo volume has been increased by 8.2%. And 66% compared to last year. And for the second feature, it's about the quality of the international circulation. We have continued to improve the quality. As for the outbound pressure, we continue to stabilize the foreign trade and optimize the structure. For the export, we have realized positive growth. So for the international market, we could see we have a stable share. for the export of the volume has been increased by 0.6% compared to last year. And also the general trade also have a rebound and increase compared to last year. And at the same time, we will continue to expand our cooperation with other countries and to promote the high-quality development with the BRI countries. And we have worked with over 140 countries to become the major importer, and we will continue our efforts for the international cooperation. In 2023, the total volume contributed to the BRI countries has increased by 2.8%. For the third features, we are continuing to reinforce domestic consumption and international circulation. We expanded our domestic consumption and increased the import. In 2023, we could see the agricultural products, the export has been increased by 5%, the consumer goods increased by 1.2%, and for the import of the energy products increased by 27.2%. We have very good structure and sufficient production capability. And for the export had also boosted the industry production in other sectors, contributed to the economic growth. In 2023, the export volume has also reached a high record, especially for the export for the mechanical products, up by 2.9%. For example, the solar panels, the new energy vehicles, for all of these exports has also exceeded over trillion yuan, up by 29%. Now we are seeing we have good improvement of the dual circulation. At the same time, we have to understand that we still have some weakness for the circulation in the global market. For example, right now the structure has been changing in the world and the global market has faced a lot of challenges. We will continue to boost the domestic consumption, deepen the supply side reform, and also promote the high-quality development. We will continue to deepen our reform and high-level development to make sure that all the weaknesses can be removed and continue to reinforce the dual circulation. Thank you. Next question, please.
后面吧，第4排那位外国记者。
So that the dual circulation can reinforce each other. Thank you.
Good morning, Market News International. Recent data shows that China's consumer price index was negative for the 3rd consecutive month in December. What is the outlook for CPI, and will the government take any measures to address the low rate of inflation? Thank you.
请翻译一下。
美国国际市场新闻社近期的数据显示，中国12月 CPI 连续第3个月出现负增长。CPI 前景如何？政府是否会采取措施应对物价低迷？
好，谢谢你的提问啊。这个物价的问题啊，也是
Thank you
社
for
会
your
各方面
question.
啊这个高度的这个关注。
Consumer prices has drawn a lot of attention from the society. In 2023,
总体啊是保持了
on the whole,
温和上涨的
China's consumer prices stayed on a trajectory of moderate growth.
这个0.2%。
The annual CPI was up by 0.2%. In recent months, as you rightly said,
连续啊
China's CPI
3个月的啊这个负增长
has
下降。
saw negative growth for 3 running months.
我们
Then what is our
看这个总
assessment?
体数据
In fact, if we look at the overall number,
里面的这个结构性的
well, we need to look at the whole picture, but also the structural elements.
CPI 的同比下
In
降，
the recent months,
主要是结构性的
the moderation in the CPI is structural and temporary.
和阶段性的。那么
Let's talk about the structural element first.
价格这个下降，影响拉动价格下降主要的因素
The main
是食品
factors driving the decline of the prices are the fall in the prices of food and energy.
核心 CPI
The CPI, the core CPI deducting food and energy prices remain stable. This proves that the falling price is not extensive or across the board, but rather partial and structural.
那么食品和能源价格的下降，
The falling prices in food and energy
是一个市场供求关系的变化。
are not exactly the result of the changes in market supply and demand.
23年这2年来看，
If we look at
主要是受到
the figures of the past 2 years, the price drops are mainly affected by some non-economic and
那么现在这个能源价格，特别是石油的价格，
abnormal
在我们国家
factors.
CPI 的这个篮子当中，
For
已
example,
经替代了猪肉，成为
energy
第一大
prices have
第一大
become the
那么这个能源价格的
primary factor in China's CPI, replacing the price of
就
pork.
是去年的12月份，2023年12月份，
In December
能源的价格
2023,
是下降
energy
2%，
prices dropped by 0.5%.
是上涨5.8%。
But
那么2022年
in the previous year,
更高，12
it
月
was
份
up by
5.8%。
5.2%.
那大家都知道，能源价格主要是受到的是
We all know that energy prices were mainly affected by
这个搅动了这个能源
the conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
能源大幅上涨。
In 2023, we saw
2023年
soaring prices in energy,
一正一反，
and it dropped in 2023.
肯定拉动比较
So
向下。
there have been some major fluctuations,
那么再看食品，
and the prices have been driven down
食品呢
last year.
我们2023年的12月份
If we look at
同比下降
food prices,
3.7%。
in December of last
在
year,
上年同期，
food prices was down by 3.7%, but the food prices in the previous year, namely 2023, was up by
那么这一
4.8%.
说大家也都能够理解了。
So I think this
我们主要是
contrast
受这个疫情的影
speaks
响
a lot.
物流的不畅
In
各种食品价格
2022,
那么到
the
恢复
pandemic
常态
and
化运行以后
the transportation difficulties have all taken their
去年
toll
高基数其实
on the consumer
自然的
prices.
这个回落这样
So last year,
所以说
with those obstacles removed, the prices will
都
naturally
是一个短期影响
come down.
这样一个因素造成的。
But all those factors are short-term factors.
那么第二个呢我们讲它是一个阶段性的
Second,
就
such
CPI 的下降
CPI
是一个阶段
decline
性
is temporary.
这个特别是我们国家经济在回升向好，
In particular, the Chinese economy is now
居民收
recovering
入呢
with a good
平稳的这个
momentum,
增长，
and people's incomes are rising steadily.
要扩大的要扩大。
So domestic
对我
demand
们
is
的商品
bound
和服务的
to expand.
价格回升呢是有基础，
There
是有
are
条件的。
conditions and basis for
那么近期
the
的
recovery
春节
of consumer
假期也临
prices.
近
With the
这
Spring
个食品的消
Festival
费需求在
approaching,
增加，
demand for
大家
food consumption
外出
will
就餐
also grow.
走亲访
People
访友
would
旅
dine
游出
out,
行等服务消费
visit
的
their
这个
friends
也更
and
加活跃。
families, and would
这些
also
呢都会
travel.
这个
Such activities will become more
CPI
vibrant. All of these
这个
will help
季节性的
drive
这个回
the
升。
CPI up.
那么从环比情况看
If we look at the
2023年
quarter-to-quarter
12月份
figures,
CPI 是环比
last
上涨了
December the
0.1%。
CPI grew by 0.1% quarter-on-quarter.
2023年1月这已经过了17天我
In
们监测
January
监
this
测的
year,
这个情
in
况
the
来看
17 days that
有
have
部分的
passed,
这个食品价格
as we have
这个
monitored,
也开始
the
保持了
prices
一个
of some
稳中略
food
涨的
have also maintained this growth momentum of stability.
另外呢，就是影响这个价格除了
In addition,
供求之外
we know that in addition to market supply and demand, people's expectations are also an important factor that will affect consumer prices. Well, in recent period, the confidence and expectations of enterprises and residents have all recovered. For example, in December, the production and operation expectation index in manufacturing industry and the business activity expectations index have reached 5.9% and 60.3% respectively in the range of expansion. And prosperity index for large enterprises reached 109 points, 0.4%, up by 0.4% from the previous quarter, and consumer confidence index has also recovered by 0.6% in December. All these expectations would also have an influence or impact on the CPI. And third, the low CPI also, to a certain extent, reflects such problems as inadequate effective demand. And this is a temporary phenomena as the Chinese economy returns to normal after 3 years of COVID-19. Insufficient demand in the short term would drive prices down. And the central leadership pays a great deal of attention to the lack of demand. At the Central Economic Work Conference, it was emphasized that domestic demand must be vigorously expanded to move from post-COVID recovery to continued expansion. The conference has also identified a series of specific tasks and directions. With the implementation of these stimulus policies, the problem of inefficient effective demand would also be gradually resolved, and consumer prices would also stabilize and rise. And we expect that in 2024, there will be a moderate rise in CPI. Thank you.
这边吧，第4排，第3排那位女记者。
谢谢主持人。总台央视记者提问：高质量发展是全面建设社会主义现代化国家的首要任务。
High quality development is the primary task for building a modern socialist country. What is the progress in promoting high quality development? What measures will be taken going forward? Thank you for your question. High quality development is the cardinal rule in the new era, and also the primary task for building a modern socialist country on all fronts. In 2023, the various localities and the departments have done a great deal to stabilize the economy and to promote high-quality development. The Chinese economy has effectively enhanced its quality and grown in a reasonable range. And we have taken stronger and firmer steps on the path of high-quality development, as evidenced in the following 5 areas. First, major progress has been made in building the modern industrial system with accelerated transition in development drivers.
The various localities and departments are committed to building a modern industrial system led by innovation and have taken solid steps to promote high-end, smart and green development in manufacturing industry. There have been growing new drivers and new strengths of China's economic growth, and new progress has been made in building the modern industrial system. Second, there has been in-depth headway in reform and opening up, with development vitality further unleashed. Last year, China has worked vigorously for a unified national market, and we have worked to improve the environment for the private sector to build a market-oriented, law-based and world-class business environment, which very much invigorated economic growth. By the end of September last year, 181 million business entities have been registered nationwide, including 122 million self-employed businesses. We have also accelerated our efforts to promote high-standard opening up and enhance international economic and trade exchanges, and enhance high-quality Belt and Road cooperation. We have successfully held the CIIE, the CIFTS, and the Canton Fair. China's trade with Belt and Road partners grew by 2.8% from the previous year, and the value of intended transaction at the CIIE also grew by 6.7% from the previous year. Third, there has been further transition in the growth model. As we deepen the green and low carbon transition, we are committed to promoting economic growth through green and low carbon transition. Green ways of production and life are taking shape rapidly. We are committed to building a low-carbon, clean, safe, and highly efficient energy system. The energy mix continues to improve. In 2023, the share of non-fossil fuel consumption in total energy consumption picked up by 0.2 percentage points from the previous year. By the end of last year, the installed capacity in renewable energy accounted for over half of the total, exceeding that of coal for the first time. The production of green and low-carbon products is also growing rapidly. Last year, the electric vehicle output in China grew by 30.3%, ranking number one in its production and sales, and the exports of electric passenger vehicles also grew by 67.1%. Fourth, people's living standards are further improved with a strong and effective safeguard for people's livelihood. Promoting people's well-being is the fundamental goal of development. Last year saw stable growth in the income of urban and rural residents, improvement in public services and social insurance, and further strengthening of the weak links, and thus allow high-quality development to deliver more tangible benefits to the people. In 2023, the government subsidies, living allowances, and cash subsidies provided by the government to the peasants and the population grew by 10.3%. Investment in the production and supply of water, power and heating, and investment in agriculture grew by 23% and 9.3% respectively, markedly faster than that of total investment. Fifth, the foundation is being further cemented for ensuring the security of our development, especially in agriculture and energy. We have effectively ensured security in the process of promoting development and achieved sound development on the basis of ensuring security. In the meantime, we must be sober-minded that China is still at a critical stage of shifting its development model, improving its economic structure, and changing its growth drivers. We still need to overcome a lot of difficulties to further promote high-quality development. We need to act on the guiding principles of the Central Economic Work Conference, take high-quality development as the cardinal rule in the new era, and effectively enhance the quality of economic growth, which should remain in a reasonable range, and turn the blueprint of Chinese modernization into a reality. Thank you.
这边第4排那位记者，对。
谢谢，我是路透社的。我也比较关心这个结构。
With Reuters, I also want to ask about economic structure. I want to ask how will China achieve its transition from the old to the new driving forces? And in the process of China's efforts to promote advanced manufacturing industry, how to prevent overcapacity? And also, without the support of demand, will such new growth model lead to further pressure on deflation? I want to give the floor to our spokeswoman to take these questions.
Thank you for your question. You asked multiple questions. I'll try to give you an answer. So you mentioned the conversion between old and new kinetic energy. So among the 5 development philosophy, innovation is number 1. So the priority of high-quality development is the conversion from old kinetic energy to the new one. So no matter how we have been committed to the conversion. So just now, Commissioner Kang Yi gave us a detailed briefing on the development, economic development. So I'll give you more perspective. In 2023, industrial products total value added of industrial products above the designated size increased by 6.8%. So in 2023, China's innovation index has increased to number 12. And we've made achievements in other innovation areas. It's fair to say that innovation has become an important driving force. And the second, we see good momentum in the recovery of internal demand. I believe you've also experienced this. With a stronger pulling from demand, it's fair to say that economic circulation and the supply and the demand relationship are recovering. I'll give you some perspective. In fourth quarter, the sales rate of industrial products from enterprises above the designated size reached 97%. In terms of the usage rate of capacity in the industry, also reached over 70%. So every quarter, it's increasing. It shows that with the recovery of economic demand, the usage of industrial capacity are also recovering. And this year, we see that winter sports, winter tourism are also very popular. This also shows the potential of our market, so we are more confident in the recovery of consumer markets this year. We are still in a critical phase of economic recovery. So in the future, we will still try to seek progress in stability to ensure that we can achieve effective quality growth and quantity growth. Okay, Straits Times. So last year, we see the real estate market influence on the macroeconomy. So this year, will it be stable? Thank you for your question. The real estate market has always drawn close attention from all fields. Last year at the press conference, a journalist asked about the real estate market, asked about the development and the future. People were all very concerned about that. To our knowledge, according to the data from our side, after more than 20 years of development, currently the real estate market is in the process of adjustment and transition. Against this general backdrop, local authorities and government departments are adapting to the new situation where the demand and supply relationship in this market is going through major changes. They are adjusting and upgrading regarding policies in due time. And currently, there are positive changes in this market, mainly from two aspects. The first one is the investment and sales are seeing a slower rate of decline. In 2023, investment in real estate development decreased by 9.6%. The drop narrowed by 0.4 percentage point. Funds in place for real estate companies decreased by 13.6%. The drop narrowed by 12.3 percentage point. The drop in sales of commercial buildings also narrowed. In 2023, the selling areas and sales volume of commercial buildings decreased by 8.5% and 6.5% respectively. Although they are decreasing, but the drops have been narrowed. The drops in sales volume, in sales area, narrowed by 15.8 percentage point, and in sales volume, narrowed by 12.2 percentage point. Since August, the number of newly built commercial buildings put on online documents for record generally increased. In December, the number increased by 12.2%. And our bureau have released data of real estate data of 70 large and middle cities. So in the 70 large and middle cities, sales volume, trading volume of new buildings and second-hand housing are moderately increasing. And secondly, there's a faster increase in the floor area of finished buildings. Delivery of housing projects are going on steadily, and we've seen effects. In 2023, floor area of finished houses increased by 17% compared with 2022. So we are in transition, but the drops have been narrowed. That's the general picture. What about the future in this market? I think China still has a good foundation in terms of long-term sound development of the market. There are several reasons. First, because China still has a large room for improvement in terms of the quality and the quantity of urbanization. In 2023, the urbanization rate was 66.16%. Compared with 80% in developed economies, we still have a big room to improve. So urbanization in China is still going on development. In the past 5 years, China's urbanization rate has been increasing on average for about 0.93 percentage point every year. Every year, over 10 million rural residents enter towns. There's a large number of new urban citizens. They require houses. Although per capita housing area in China is relatively big, but many houses were built in the 1990s and 80s. The structures of the houses are not very good and they don't function well. So many people are eager to improve their housing conditions, which will also provide a boost to the development of the real estate market. This also applies to the 70 large and middle cities we've been monitoring. And trading volume of second-hand houses are increasing. In these 70 cities, trading volume of second-hand houses have exceeded new houses. And secondly, China has great potential in building a new development paradigm of real estate market. Currently, we are actively building a new development paradigm in this market. This is a policy to the cause in terms of cracking the difficulties in real estate development and promoting standard and stable and sound development. We are fastly forwarding government-subsidized housing and the building of infrastructure capable of operating both under normal conditions and emergencies, and also reconstruction of city villages to help people solve the problems in housing. And such work will also drive up consumption and investment related to the real estate market, help with a continued sound development of the market. Thank you. Recently, multiple international agencies and business agencies revised up their forecast for China's economic growth, thinking China is still the biggest engine for international economic growth. What's your take on this, and how's China's economic promise in 2024? Thank you for your question. In terms of China's economic performance in 2024, it has drawn up a lot of attention. 2024 marks the 75th anniversary of the founding of People's Republic of China. And it's also a critical year in implementing the 14th five-year plan. 2024 economic forecast, there will be some difficulties and challenges, but there are more favorable factors, advantages. In general, in 2024, China's economic growth faces more opportunities than challenges, more favorable conditions than disadvantaged ones. And China's economy will grow, will develop good in the long term, and we have more factors and conditions supporting high-quality development. In 2024, China's economy will continue to grow. We have 5 advantages in this regard. 1, good momentum in economic growth. In 2023, no matter year-on-year or month-on-month, our GDP all increased. Economic size increased every quarter. There was obvious recovery and growth. Apart from calculating the statistics, our Bureau also monitored and compared some products. For example, power generation and using production of major industrial products, imports and exports. Most of these indicators, their absolute number far exceed that of 2019. That's before the pandemic. Just like the friend from Straits Times, it's mainly that the indicator in the real estate market is below that of the 2019, but other indicators are higher. It shows that our economic performance is getting better. As in the question, we've also taken notice of the forecasts of international agencies. For example, the IMF and OECD revised up their forecast by 0.4 and 0.1 percentage point respectively. This shows the international community is positive in China's economic performance in 2024. Second, resilient economic development. China has a strong industrial basis. We are the only country with all the industrial categories listed by the UN. We have a whole set capacity of industries. Total value added of manufacturing industry accounts for 1/3 of the world, accounting for number 1 for many years in a row. And export of goods account for 1/7 in the world. In terms of education and medical, we have shortcomings, but we are catching up. The provision of factors including talent and funds are also increasing. We've achieved real results in guaranteed capacity in food, energy, industrial chain, and supply chain. These all strengthened the resilience of China's economic growth, and it's why we are confident China's economy can grow stably in the long term. Third, dynamic high-quality development. New industries and patterns are increasing at a faster rate. Economic structure has been upgrading, and there's a conversion between old and new kinetic energy. Total value added of service industry account for 54.6% of the GDP, contributing over 60% to economic growth. Manufacturing, technology, reform investment increased by 3.8%. High-tech industry investment increased by 10.3%, all faster than all fixed asset investment. More importantly, China is continuing to advancing the new development with innovation as a priority. China's economy is growing among having a good force of producing force. Fourth, reform and opening up have released a lot of dividends. Reform and opening up is a biggest feature of China. We stick to the basic economic system of socialism, sticking to two unwaveringly, accelerating the building of a national economy, a national market, and try to create a more level playing field for all kinds of enterprises. These all make those business entities more creative and active. And five, we have a broad space in macro policies. In 2023, China will continue to roll out policies in increasing national bonds, tax and fee cut, lower reserve ratio and interest rate. And this year, China will reserve and upgrade new measures and existing policies will together play their role to help with a stable economy. Currently, the debt level and inflation of the Chinese government is relatively low, and we have more policies. There's broad space in terms of financial, monetary, and other policies. We still have space and conditions for implementing macro policies. To make sure 2024 economic performance to grow, we do have difficulties and challenges. Not long ago, China hosted the Central Economic Work Conference. In the conference, the challenges were analyzed and the concrete measures were put forward. As long as we implement the arrangements of the Central Economic Work Conference, continue to translate the advantages in our development, this year, China's economy will face challenges head-on and forge ahead with resolve to achieve effective qualitative improvement and quantitative growth. Thank you.
谢谢主持人，我是澎湃新闻的记者。2023年社会消费品零售总额呈现了逐步回升的态势。
In 2023, consumer products retail sales have gradually recovered, but we still face a lack of demand. What is your assessment of the consumer market in 2023? What is your assessment for this year? Will this recovery continue? Thank you for your question. It is a question about consumption. First, the consumer market in 2023 and expectations for 2024. Well, on the whole, in 2023, the consumer market has recovered with a good momentum over the past 3 years. The consumer market has taken a big hit. Consumption that involved contacts and large groups have been curtailed. With COVID-19 response transitioning to a new stage, the economy and the society have returned to normal. Consumption is also showing a good momentum of recovery with a lot of highlights. Consumption has become the main driver for economic recovery last year. First, the volume of consumption reached new heights. Last year, total retail sales exceeded 47 trillion yuan, which is a record high. Second, consumption is once again the main driver of economic growth. Final consumption spending has driven the economy up by 4.3 percentage points. It has increased by 3.1 percentage points from the previous year. Its contribution to economic growth reached 82.5%, up by 43.1 percentage points. And third, consumption in services has recovered quite rapidly. The recovery in service consumption is also one bright spot in the recovery of consumption last year. The retail sales in services grew by 20% from the previous year, 14.2 percentage points faster than retail sales in goods. Per capita spending on services grew by 14.4%, accounting for 45.2% of total per capita consumption. Fourth, the consumption mix continues to upgrade. In particular, as people's living standards rise and as their income increases, China is now at a period of rapid upgrading of consumption mix. So that is the assessment of the consumer market last year. Well, going forward, there are some positive conditions supporting good and sound growth in consumer spending. First, there is still enormous potential for consumption. We have a population of 1.4 billion and a mega market. This gives us great strength. The integrated development of urban and rural areas and the upgrading of the consumption structure would all provide broad space for consumption growth. In particular, potential in such areas as health and medical services will be further unleashed. Second, the foundation for consumption will be further cemented. Income is the precondition and foundation of consumption. With the economy recovering and jobs improving, and people's income is also growing steadily, this would support greater consumption growth. And third, there have been new bright spots in consumption. For example, digital consumption, green consumption, health consumption, and tourism consumption have all been growing rapidly. Smart homes, recreation, tourism, sports, and other new hotspots in consumption are also thriving, providing new drivers for the expansion and greater quality of consumer market. And fourth, measures to stimulate consumption are paying off. The various localities and departments are prioritizing consumption. They have introduced a number of stimulus measures to stabilize and expand traditional consumption, cultivate new types of consumption. This will continue to play a positive role in stabilizing the consumer market and recovering consumption. So we are optimistic about the future trends of consumption in 2024 in China.
谢谢主持人。21世纪经济报道记者提问：
My question is about the fifth economic census. The economic census was officially launched on January the 1st this year. What is the progress so far? What are the new highlights? How to ensure the quality of the data?
Thank you for your question. The fifth economic census is a major census on China's national condition and strength in the new journey in the new era. It has a major task of finding out China's economic strength and the progress of high-quality development. Currently, we've completed the work of verifying units. Currently, the registration work is going on in an orderly manner, especially since January the 1st. On January the 3rd, Vice Premier Ding Xuexiang went to the site of a census to communicate with census staff, and he also put forward clear requirements for the census work. So currently, the work is going on in an orderly manner. January to April is an official registration stage, and it's also the most important stage. It's important for getting high-quality consensus data. As for the new highlights, we mainly focus on high-quality development. We have new way of census and also enriched the content of this census. The fifth census will not only look into the size, layout, and the efficacy of the second and third industries, but will also upgrade our census system to have a high-quality survey and monitor system. There are three aspects here. So, in the past, the input and output investigation was separate, but this time the two investigations are integrated so that we can have more comprehensive and systematic data. And second, there's data about digital economy to better reflect the digitalization process of China's economy. And we've systematically looked into the platform economy to lay a foundation for looking into the development of new industries, new business forms, and new development patterns. And thirdly, we have new ways of census. We've deepened our usage of administrative documents and added a new way of self-inputting data. And for the first time, we use cell phone mini programs to collect data. And for the first time, we set up a e-ledger for input and output survey to improve the quality and the quantity of this census. And we've taken a series of measures to ensure the quality of the data. The quality of data is the most fundamental standard to see if the census is successful or not. So first, we conducted a standard way more standard way of collecting data. So this time, we combined different ways, including going into the households, let people to put in data themselves, and ask units, departments to report on their data, so that we can strictly control man-made interference in the collection period. And secondly, we've taken to multiple ways to have check and review of data. We've taken to big data and multiple analytical methods to have verify and review. There will be real-time check of the data. And after the registration, the State Council Economic Census Office will have a sample review of the data to comprehensively check the quality of the data. Thirdly, we will strictly investigate and punish census fabrication. For any practices that's against the law or regulations in the census, we will punish and take care of them immediately, according to law. Currently, there are over 2.1 million census staff in China. They are in China's households, in the businesses, to collect data. And the data they collected is being reported in an orderly manner. And here I'd like to thank the efforts of those census staff and those who cooperate with them. And I hope friends from media will continue to support, publicize, and monitor the census so that we can have a high-quality census. Now, continue your questions. For the interest of time, let's take the last two questions.
There have been media reports that in the first 11 months, there is a big gap of 294.6 billion kilowatts between the power generation and the power consumption. Why the difference?
Thank you for your question. We've also noticed that there are reports and discussions about the difference in electricity consumption and generation. Electricity consumption and generation are two important indicators reflecting the performance of the power industry. The two indicators they have the difference you mentioned in the question. It's because the indexes are different. So electricity consumption, it's the whole society electricity consumption. And the other is power generation from industrial enterprises above a designated size. So now, maybe you've already understood. Consumption is consumption of the whole society, while generation is only from enterprises above the designated size. There are also enterprises below the designated size, and they also generate power. There are also households, businesses, especially with new energy like solar power, wind power, photovoltaic. They are growing rapidly, and they usually are spread in households, they're pretty much all below the designated size. Therefore, this power generation wasn't included in the power generation data. So I'd like to explain the indicators more to help you have a better understanding of it. So first, they have different statistical calibers. Whole society power consumption and generation from enterprises above the designated size, the data is collected from the user and the provider, respectively. So the whole society electricity consumption calculate all power usage, including enterprise usage, household usage, and also power plants using of power, and power lost in the grid. While power generation from enterprises above the designated size, they only calculate power generated by enterprises with an annual revenue of over 20 million RMB yuan. It doesn't include power generated by small enterprises that are below the designated size. So, of course, the two indicators have difference. And a second, the statistics are affected by distributed generation of power. In recent years, broad and dispersed small distributed solar power and wind power have been growing rapidly, and they are spread among households, businesses, and enterprises below the designated size. Their volume are small. They don't meet the threshold of calculation. We also calculate the volume from the smaller producers, but not in our monthly industrial power generation, because it's very difficult to have that. But we calculate and release such data at an annual rate, and we'll release the whole society power generation in an annual report. Generally speaking, industrial enterprises power generation above the designated size account for over 95% in the whole society power generation. But the number is decreasing. Power generation from entities below the designated size is increasing. So it's not because the electric meters are too smart or they are too fast or so on. You have to look at the full name of the power generation number we released. That's power generation from industrial enterprises above the designated size. And when looking at these figures, you have to look at the meaning and coverage of such indicator. Okay, last question, please.
谢谢主持人。南方都市报记者提问，想问一下，2023年就业形势如何？My
question is about the job market in 2023. Are the targets being met? We expect to see record high the number of graduates from universities. What is your assessment of this year's employment?
这个就业啊，也是大家非常关注的问题。
Employment is a big subject of concern and interest. It is vital for people's livelihood. The CPC Central Committee and the State Council always give great attention to employment. They always emphasize that stabilizing employment should be made a major strategy. All the localities and departments have prioritized jobs in their policy making. Over the past year, we have done everything to stabilize the job market, which is on the whole improving. First, surveyed unemployment rate has declined, and new jobs are being created. The specific numbers have been released in my opening remarks. If we look at the 4 quarters, the average urban surveyed unemployment rate from Q1 to Q4 was 5.4%, 5.23%, 5.2%, 5.2%, and 5%, showing a clear momentum of gradual improvement in the job market. In the first 11 months of last year, 11.8 million new jobs were created, 350,000 more than the same period of last year. Second, we have provided strong safeguard for the employment of key groups. We have introduced a number of job incentives, and our efforts to support and help key demographics are paying off. Employment for migrant workers, young people, and those with difficulty finding jobs are being effectively ensured. Last year, the number of migrant workers reached 297.53 million, 1.91 million more than last year. The surveyed unemployment rate among migrant workers stood at 4.9%, 0.7 percentage points down from the same period of last year. In the first 10 months of last year, 4.75 million unemployed urban people were reemployed. And third, employment among those lifted out of poverty has also increased while maintaining stability. The various localities and departments have leveraged their mechanisms of coordination and assistance and carried out special programs to help poor counties and relocated the poor population, and has steadily increased job creation for these demographics. By November last year, 32.94 million jobs were provided to those lifted out of poverty. As for this year's job market, the pressure is still there, and the structural problems for certain demographics and certain industries remain pronounced, but with the economy improving and the good momentum being cemented, positive factors for stabilizing employment continue to build, and the job market is expected to stay stable. First, a larger economy will bring about more jobs. Economic growth is the foundation for stabilizing and expanding employment. In recent years, the increment in China's economy continues to expand. This is the key to driving job growth. This year, the increment in the Chinese economy is expected to exceed that of last year, which will provide strong support for job expansion. Second, in 2024, the population exiting the labor market will be bigger than the size of the newcomers. This will provide more space for the job seekers. Third, industrial upgrading would also expand employment. Compared with other industries, The more labor-intensive service industry has a greater advantage in creating jobs. In my opening remarks, I also released the figures regarding the service industry, which is recovering with a good momentum. Its share in the economy is also on the rise. Its share in the economy has exceeded the pre-pandemic level. Industries such as catering, transportation, wholesale and retail sales have been playing a prominent role in driving job creation. This year, the service industry will continue to be one of the main drivers for job creation. In the meantime, new industries and new business models would create new job opportunities, which would also help expand the space for a greater job market and enhance the job quality. And fourth, the policies for stabilizing employment will continue to pay off. The Central Economic Work Conference has also made overall plans in this regard, emphasizing the need for introducing policies for stabilizing people's expectations, growth, and employment to step up support for key demographics and prioritize job creation, which will provide strong safeguard for ensuring the stability of the job market. I want to thank the two speakers and all the journalists. With that, we conclude today's press briefing. Thank you.